Now that I've explained in the previous video what the quadratic formula is and how you can use the discriminant to find the number of solutions, I'm now going to demonstrate how do you use the quadratic formula for two examples. Here's a reminder of what the quadratic formula is. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And just a reminder that everywhere you see a variable, you are going to put parentheses. And this is how we're going to write the quadratic formula for examples. Everywhere we have a variable, we're going to put in parentheses. I also want to refresh your memory that we're looking for when the parabola or the quadratic equation crosses the x-axis. Let's go ahead and solve this quadratic formula using, solve this quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. So I have the steps listed on the right hand side for you, and step 1 says identify A, B, and C. But before you even begin steps, make sure that your quadratic equation is in standard form. You want it set equal to 0. So A is going to equal 6, B is 5, and C is negative 4. And so now let's go ahead and write our quadratic formula. And because I don't have too much space, I'm going to go ahead and write it with the parentheses in place of the variable. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 multiplied by a multiplied by c, and this is divided by 2a. Just a reminder that you want to use parentheses in place of the variables. And that you have to memorize, this is what I wanted to say, is that you have to memorize the formula. Let me go ahead and enlarge the screen so it gives me more room. Okay. So b is 5, negative b. It's going to be b squared, so 5 again. And this is how I teach my kids too. Last year was b, b, a, c, a. B, B, A, C, A. B, B, A, C, A. Okay. And so then we're going to plug in A, which is 6. C, which is negative 4. And A again, which is 6. And now we'll simplify. Before we simplify, I was going too fast. So here's a strategy that I learned last year from a textbook, is that if you circle and simplify this first, it makes it very easy to take the square root and simplify the whole quadratic formula. So we're going to first simplify that, and we just got to remember the order of operations. So exponent is first, and I get 25. Then I'm going to do, and if there's an extra negative over here, you want to change the negatives, because it's going to be double negatives, to positives, okay? And if there's only that one negative in the middle, then your final answer would be negative. But this one isn't being positive. So 4 times 6 is 24. And then we have 24 times 4, which equals 96. So this is 25 plus 96, and that's going to equal 121. So now I'm going to replug this part, just this part, back in, and I have x equals negative 5, because negative times 5 is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of 121. See how nice that is? Now I'm putting it back in, and then I've divided by 12. So let's keep going. We have x equals negative 5 plus or minus 11 divided by 12. And you would think this is our final answer, but it's not, because of the plus and minus in the middle. That means I need to split off into 2. One that has a plus and one that has a minus to simplify. So we're going to do that here. I'll do one with the plus first. So that's negative 5 plus 11 divided by 12. And we have the minus, which is going to be negative 5 minus 11 divided by 12. And when you simplify each answer, for the blue one, we get 1/2. And for the red one, we get negative 16 over 12. Let's reduce by 4. So then I get negative 4 all over 3. 4 over 3. And now, these are my answers. But remember, we got to have it in root form. So my final solution is 1/2, 0. And negative 4/3, 0. And now my answers are in root form. And remember, we could have got the same answers by graphing, or by factoring, but we use the quadratic formula, and the quadratic formula always works. For the last slide, I mentioned that the quadratic formula always works. What I mean by that is if you use the factoring method, that means your quadratic has to be factorable. And if you use the square root methods, that means that it has to be set up, your quadratic has to be set up to use the square root method. And sometimes with graphing, it's not always exact either. Maybe the axis symmetry gives you a fraction, and that's really complicated. But the quadratic formula is your safety net. It always works, and it always works for a complicated problem. So you want to make sure that you always have this in your algebra toolbox to use. So now let's go and use the quadratic formula to solve the quadratic equation. Notice it's not in standard form, so my first step is to add 5x to both sides so I get the equation set equal to 0. And now I have negative 3x squared, and I'll put the plus 5x because it's my b term, which goes second, and then add 2, and that equals 0. I will identify my a, b, c. A is negative 3, B is 5, and C is 2. And then now I'm going to write my quadratic equation using parentheses. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 multiplied by a multiplied by c, and this is divided by 2a. And just a side note, notice the entire denominator is divided by 2a, which means you must simplify the top first before you divide it by 2a. I had students that had difficulty with that last year. So let's go ahead and plug in let's substitute in our numbers for our variables. 5, because it goes b, b, a, c, a. I will also go over how to memorize the formula in class tomorrow. So let's go ahead and move this up. Give me extra space. Make sure you have the steps written down. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to solve this using quadratic formula, and then we're going to check our answer looking at a graph. So here is the discriminant, and it tells us how many solutions we have, but it also is the thing that we should simplify first. So I'm going to get 25, and notice that I have double negatives again, so they become positive. I get 12 times 2. So this is going to be plus 24. Yes. And this is going to be, and now 25 plus 24 is going to give us 49. Notice that we get perfect squares, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So we'll discuss in class what to do tomorrow. So now we're going to go simplify. So negative 5, because negative times 5 is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of 49. And this is being divided by negative 6. And now we'll take the square root, so I get negative 5 plus or minus 7 divided by negative 6. But because I have whole numbers, I need to simplify and split it off into two parts. So the first part is a plus, so negative 5 plus 7 divided by negative 6. And the second one is going to be a minus, negative 5 minus 7 divided by negative 6. And I believe we're going to get fractions as our answer again. So here I get, for the black one, for the first 0, I'm going to end up getting 2 over negative 6, which is negative 1/3. And then here I get negative 12 over negative 6, which is positive 2. Cool, I got a whole answer and a fraction. So remember, they need to be in root form, so I'm just going to add the 0 in. There we go, and this is our answer for the quadratic. So now on the next slide, I want to prove to you that these are our solutions by looking at a graph. And really, we need to know what the decimal is of 1/3, and the decimal of 1/3 is 0.333, and it goes on. All right, so now let's go ahead and see and make sure that these are solutions by graphing this quadratic equation. Now we're here checking. Remember that negative 1/3 was 0.33 repeating, and here it is on the graph of the quadratic. And then over here, this point here is our 2. And they just show it, this is the same exact graph here and here, but they're just showing here's the negative 1/3, and here's the 2, but here is the negative 1/3 as well, and here is the 2 as well. So we could check just by looking at a graph using a graphing calculator or some other application online. Please bring your questions tomorrow to class, and I'd like to answer them. And on the next slide, keep watching because I'm going to give you an extra credit opportunity since this is our last video of the school year. Alright guys, like I said, this is our last video, so I want to really commend you on the fact that you stayed through the entire school year doing videos from the note or from the textbooks. For your extra credit opportunity for this video, you need to come up to me. You have to show me your notes for this section. You're going to say the words great job, and I will give you 10 extra credit points. And just a reminder, I will have grades updated by Tuesday of next week. Alright, see you tomorrow in class, and thanks for being patient on these videos.